Gary Vee was someone you were listening to. You were listening to a lot of people in this space. And then
Yeah.
early on, you booked Gary Vee on your podcast. Can you
Yeah.
tell me about that story?
Absolutely, man. So it's a great story. I was working at Amazon and I went to this real estate conference in LA and I had no business being there, dude. And I was in a suit and I didn't want to be in a suit. I was just like this, just in this strange period of my life. But I went and I paid for this VIP ticket, paid for the flight out there and then the hotel and all that stuff. Even though I had no interest in real estate, knew nothing about it. I went to confirm that he was the real deal.
Mm.
So I paid VIP so that I'd be right in the front. And there we are. And I'm in the front. And I had gotten in touch with people on his staff trying to just be like, hey, is there any way I could ask him a question? And of course, they're just like probably inundated with weird requests like that. So like no one really got back to me. So I had been watching his content and I knew in some of the vlogs that he had the Q&A, the lines for his Q&A were like a mile long. So I'm like, this is so perfect, man. Like I'm in prime position. I'm like literally right by the microphone. I'm like, this is great. So I just had a podcast concept that I wanted to talk to him about, and he came out, and everything he said was amazing. I was like, he's the real deal. I felt the energy in person. I was like, this is great. So he mentioned something like, in a while we'll start Q&A or whatever, and I was like, cool. So I was gonna get up and stand behind the microphone, and I looked to my right, and there's like a dude kneeling next to me in front of the microphone, and I look, and there's like a line a mile long behind him, and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, and I was like, dude, I'm right here. And I like had my foot out. He's like, you can go after me. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna get messy. But it worked out. So I got to ask him a question. And it was basically about podcasting, veteran podcast about veterans that I wanted to do. But before that, I said, hey Gary, I was like, I'm a retired Marine. I was an aviator. I was like, I have my squadron patch I want to give you. And I was like, can I bring it up? So, I've seen people give him jet stuff or whatever, but I was like, he's never gotten a squadron patch from an attack helicopter squadron from the Marine Corps ever. I know it. I know it. So I went, gave it to him. He's like, thank you for your service, etc. So we had our Q&A, and then we had our Q&A there, and then I met him in the back, talked to him a little bit. I saw him again at Vid Summit, got to ask a question, but this time I told him the advice he gave me changed my life. And I said, I would love to discuss it with you in New York. And he's like, let's do it. I mean, it was just that simple. I don't want to make it sound that simple, but I was like, okay. I go to New York a couple months later. It had to get rescheduled a couple times. So you could imagine how stressful that was, like canceling flights and freaking out. Like, is it even going to happen? And it did happen. And I sit in his office. We didn't even actually sit in his office. We sat in his COO's office, and it was far less distracting. And I had my camera. I'm super nervous. And he had his eyes like looking at my eyes the entire time. And this guy, he has a million things going on in his head at once. He's always on the phone. He's always recording content, but it was like two individuals. He was completely dialed into everything I was saying. And of course, he gave me just unbelievable advice. And that was it. But that became my specialty, man, was getting in front of very hard to land, getting in front of people that are very hard to get access to. But that was the start. And he shaped so much of what I wanted to do, and obviously influenced a lot of me kind of removing the barriers. The barriers are in our head about business. And that's what he really helped me out with.
Cool part about that story and kind of evaluating the early part of your journey, it seems like you had this instinct right away that like being around the right people is going to help me a lot. And not only the right people, but like the best people at what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
What kind of gave you that instinct? What gave you that kind of drive to like be like, okay, being around Gary Vee, learning from him, learning from people like him, and some of the people that you were kind of trying to get to mentor you or learn from a lot early on, like what gave you that kind of drive to try to find those people?
Oh, this is easy, man. Like, well, you told me you did 100 miler recently, right? So
Yeah.
you ever follow who are some of the runners you follow for like advice or
Actually, running's the thing that I feel like I don't as much need a like I
no, really?
learn and read articles and stuff,
Sure.
but like running's the one of the things that I'm like, okay, I can do this like alone. But I just took up boxing. That's like something that I can no way learn on my own. That's
Sure,
like,
sure.
okay. So I need the right people to be around. Running's it's like
Got
I've
it.
been doing that as a kid. But yeah, boxing, it's like, oh, this is one thing that I'm like, I need a coach on.
Sure. So the way I look at it and what I was getting at was like, if there's certain runners that you follow or have inspired you, then like you want to know and mimic what they do. You want to read or like consume some of the content. You want to hear the stories about their first 100 mile or anything along those lines. So for me, it was a very simple formula. The instinct was, I'm inspired. I want to talk to them. I had nothing to lose, man. Like I don't have a business. I didn't have like this huge podcast. I didn't have anything. And I would tell, the audience here, if you're in that first 5 years, those first couple years are probably where you're conveniently naive and unafraid. Take advantage of that. Like just take the big risks, try and get in front of the big people, have the big asks. I mean, you never know. So my instincts were basically, he seemed so real in his content that I was just like, that's exactly how I want to be. I don't want to come across scripted. I don't want to come across, with veneer. I just want to be exactly who I am. And he inspired me to be able to do that. So I was like, I will stop at nothing. I will get super creative to get in front of him. And that kind of changed how I approached it in the future with a lot of other big guests and clients and things like that.